Hello again, everybody. It's me, Madame Macabre, and welcome back for another story time. So for today's story time, I've got a very interesting set of events to recall. As you can tell by the title, there is a mutant attack at Bible camp. But before I can actually get into that itself, I should give you a little more context about everything that led up to that. So I know I've heard a lot of horror stories and stuff and documentaries and stuff on Bible camps, but I honestly don't know where these ones are because my experience was completely different. It was basically, you just take a regular summer camp and then, you sprinkle in a little bit of Jesus. Honestly, the only things that really differed between that and a regular camp was that at breakfast time and dinner time, you know how most summer camps will have you circle around the campfire or something for chatting with the camp director or whatever. Well, around breakfast and dinner time, we'd have a couple worship songs and a short message, and then after that it was release the children, and we'd go nuts, do our thing. I mean, I honestly have nothing but incredibly positive memories about this place, and I went multiple years until I was too old to go back. When I think about it, it was honestly the ideal summer camp that, if you just imagine your dream summer camp, what you'd see on Disney cartoons and stuff, or the ideal, that was pretty much this place. It was amazing. The property was gorgeous. It was huge. It had forested trails. I mean, there were barns full of horses that you could go on trail rides. Obviously, there were different skill levels for people who were familiar and those who weren't. But you could ride horses. There was a beautiful, glistening lake. And we had this lovely thing called the Blob, which was essentially, if you're not already aware, this giant, air sac that, floats on the lake next to a dock. And you could just, run and just, flop onto it and just, bounce a little bit. But then you could crawl down to the end, and that's where the fun came, because then another kid would run in behind you, they would jump onto the blob, and then they would just send the other kid flying off into the stratosphere. I'm sure that kind of fun stuff probably isn't allowed anymore because someone would sue. But my childhood was full of being launched off of a gelatinous blob into the murky waters of the lake below. And of course, I think the best feature of this camp was the massive open grassy field that all these crazy events happened in. The two that stick out the most in my mind were the water and mud wars. Honestly, those were some of the funnest events, even to this day, I can recall from my childhood. The water war was basically, there were 4 corners of this field and each was turned into a base. All the kids were divided into teams and it was equally rationed off between the age groups, so it wasn't just big kids versus little. And it was, you had a home base that had a big clear cylinder with lines on it. And that was your home base that you had to protect. Basically, the goal was you infiltrate other people's bases and you carry these pitchers and you're trying to pour as much water into their cylinders as possible. You also got those squeezy pool foam balls and stuff. Various means of sucking up water and trying to squeeze it into those tubes. And basically, the goal was to defend it, just super soak the hell out of a bunch of little kids, just blast them in the face, it's whatever, just keep them away from your base. And the last team to have their cylinder filled to the top was the winner. And it was just good, soggy fun that, once again, probably wouldn't be allowed because, some kid would complain that they got, deluged in the face, and their mom would want to speak to the camp manager, and it'd be all over. But from my memories, it was an amazing time. And the other event, the Mud War, I don't even remember what the goal of that one was. There was some other team goal thing. I just remember I was a little bit younger. This was one of my earlier years that we had the Mud War, because every year, the big event would change. And they just had, pools and massive tarps covered in, oatmeal and mud and just all its nastiness, and you had to search for things through it. And basically, at first, I remember being ew, it's yucky and dirty. But you see all the other kids splashing in the mud and getting disgusting and having a fun time, and you're just screw it, and you dive right in. And again, I don't remember the point of that one, but I knew there was some other challenge. I just remember that was the first time I got completely disgustingly filthy and just had a great time. But yeah, that place, it was a really, really great camp. I'm not sure if it's still going on. I'd probably have to look into it, but I have some really good memories, and that was my first real experience with a sleepaway camp. I mean, honestly, again, this was just your standard sleepaway camp, not necessarily one of those crazy, intense, scary, like Bible thumping camps. I mean, they had like this concert hall type building where every evening it would be like your standard like youth worship type events going on, but those were entirely optional. The counselors never forced anybody to go in. If you would prefer to just stay by the campfire and make s'mores with your friends, nobody was going to shoo you off and force you to go into that event. It was entirely optional. They basically were allowing these children to sort of function like young adults. They were treating them with respect and going, you are the master of your own destiny. Do you want to go? Go have a good time. And because it was optional, a lot of people went because they didn't feel forced. Anyway, so now that you've got a little context about the type of camp that this was with all the crazy antics and everything, I can really start to set up the story of the mutant attack. So basically, like you get with most camps, there would be cabins in, at least this particular camp, the boys and girls cabins were in different areas of the camp. Like there was a bunch of cabins for girls and a bunch of cabins for boys, like on opposite sides of the camp. However, that did not stop us from having crazy shenanigans. And by this, I mean pranking the hell out of each other. So I remember one of the first nights when I was getting a little bit older in one of my last years there. I'm sure other stuff happened when I was younger, but I don't remember the pranks as clearly. But when I was a little bit older, I remember coming back to our cabin after going out horse riding on the trails with my cabin group. And we get back, and the guys had busted into our cabin, and I don't know if they were actually super realistic looking or if we were just little or whatever, but they seemed really realistic looking. The guys had like scattered like all these fake cockroaches and centipedes and spiders all over, like fake spider webs just everywhere. Our entire cabin was just filled with creepy crawlies, and of course all the young girls were like like melting down, like it was a mess. And the counselor's like, you guys, they're not moving, it's fake, calm down. And obviously the guys got a big old chuckle out of this, and at that point when we had realized that we had been got, we were like, okay, we need to have some revenge. Fortunately, the older girls and the counselors were way ahead of us because we actually got them back in a very interesting way, because after the bugs, that nonsense, like, we're like, maybe we should TP them. And the counselor's like, no. Basically, the counselor that was staying in my cabin pulled out a pack of Pampers diapers. And we're like, what's going on here? Brings out the Pampers, and then out of another bag slaps down some Reese's peanut butter cups. And basically, the gist is, you grind a peanut butter cup into a diaper, and it ends up looking particularly graphic and unappetizing. So we did that to an entire pack of these Pampers diapers, and then we waited specifically until the guys were off doing archery, and then we returned the favor. We snuck into their camp, and all over, like, we didn't grind the candy into the bed or anything, but all over the cabin, the bed and everything, we just like laid out the soiled diapers all over their cabin, and then we sort of tried to hide just out of earshot to wait for them to come back and get their response. And obviously they came back and was like, oh, gross, nasty. But it was harmless fun like that. There was lots of good pranks. It wasn't until night fell towards the end of our stay at camp, because I think it was only for like a week or two. But near the end of our stay, as more and more pranks started happening, all harmless fun, and the final prank was actually done by the counselors to scare all of us younger kids. Essentially, the setup was pretty good. Very simple, but, well executed, especially when you got younger kids who are easily spooked. So we're all out at the campfire. It's completely pitch dark. We're surrounded by forest. So I guess the way, you've got the campfire pit. On one side it's forest, and behind us is a big, massive, grassy meadow that's pretty open. And you can see it all right because it's strong moonlight, but other than that, it's like completely dark. And we're sitting around the campfire, and essentially some of the older counselors start telling us this story about how the property that the campground is on, apparently there were these old ruins elsewhere that I don't know what they were actually for, but that was on the backside of the property, and they told us originally those ruins were for a government facility where they kept dangerous criminals and mutants because they did experiments on the criminals and they mutated and they were really dangerous. However, the mutants one day managed to break out and wreak havoc, and that's why the building was destroyed. Obviously, as an older person, you're like, okay, right, yeah, that's so believable. And even at that point in time, most of the kids were like, okay, sure, whatever, you know. It was just one of those dumb campfire stories that they tell to try and scare the kids. And if that were just it would be entirely unimpressive. However, where it changes and becomes a lot more entertaining was the fact that that wasn't all there was to their little prank. They were just setting up with the story of the mutants and the ruins on the property, because you see, they waited until more ghost stories were going on. They didn't just immediately rapid fire do this. They did their story, and more people started doing their ghost stories. So over time, the fear and anxiety started to build up because, you know, the group hysteria, all the scary stories. It wasn't until the final ghost story wrapped up that in the distance, we heard one of the counselors scream bloody murder. And we're just like, what's going on? Is it a cougar? Oh my God, what's going on? And then, in the distance, in the grassy field, we see two bright lights, like at the level of eyes, booking it towards us. And as it gets closer, we see this bizarrely pale figure, like a human running on all fours, and you see like the crazy like lights for eyes, and of course it's booking towards us, and all the kids are like, ah! Like freaking out, because as it's getting closer we can hear it like making all these like crazy noises. So we're freaking out. The counselor with us is like, oh my God, run you guys, ah! We start panicking and scattering, just screaming and crying. It's a mess. And then finally they're just like, wait, you guys, wait, it's just a prank. We turn around and we see that the mutant monster was actually one of the older male counselors. He basically was probably like 16, 17, and he had stripped down to his boxer shorts. So he was like pale as me, maybe paler. So just imagine, super pale, just running around in his skivvies, had like one of those spelunking cave like headband things where you can strap lights in. So he had lights strapped to his head on, and he was running on all fours in his skivvies, just like making noises. Like, high school guys are a trip. But yeah, so basically the whole thing was set up interestingly by our high school counselors, and I remember by the end I thought it was hilarious, but some of those kids were like like traumatized. Clearly you can tell who the horror lovers are going to be and who the ones who are like, no thank you, in the future. But yeah, that was probably the best prank memory I have from that camp experience. And I know I'm fortunate to be able to look back at all my sleepaway camp experiences fondly, very happy. I was very lucky to have that positive Bible camp experience, because I know it's maybe not necessarily the norm for everybody, but regardless of whether it's a Bible camp or just a regular sleepaway camp, do you guys have any crazy, funny experiences that are similar? Did you have any ridiculous pranks pulled on you by your camp counselors? If you would like to, you can share in the comments below. Even though I can't always respond to everybody, I love reading your comments. However, that is all the time we have for today's video. So if you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like, and if you are new here, please consider subscribing. But that is all for today, and I will catch you all next time. That's all for now. Bye-bye.